Today we're going to be setting up a CopyStar CS5551. We're going to be setting it up with the LDAP functionality. The LDAP functionality will allow the machine to reach out to an external server that has a list of network users and their email addresses on it. This sort of gives the benefit of not having to create an additional address book directly on the machine. Again, it allows the machine to browse an Active Directory server, browse the users on that server, and then pull them into the address book. First thing we're going to do is open up a web browser. We're going to type in the IP address of the machine that you're working on. Once you type in the IP, go ahead and click enter. You'll be brought to a page that looks just like this. On some of these machines, you guys are going to get an SSL error. On the SSL error, just go ahead and click continue. Once we're on the web page, we're going to go ahead and log in. Setting up the LDAP function is an administrative task, so we want to log in as admin. So the admin username and password is both going to be the same, capital A, lowercase d-m-i-n. Go ahead and click login. Once we're logged in, we're going to come down to address book. We're going to open that up, and then we're going to go down to external address book settings. By default, the LDAP protocol is going to be turned off, so what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to go ahead and turn that on. Once we click on the protocol page, we're going to go ahead and scroll down, and then we're going to go to the LDAP, and we're going to turn the LDAP on. Once we turn LDAP on, we can see that our page is going to expand a little bit, and it's going to give us some options for our external address books. The external address books are logical servers or logical user containers that you guys can set up individually. So if the address books or the servers that you're trying to browse do require extra security like SSL or Start TLS, you can go ahead and select it here. The testing server that we're working on today doesn't require any sort of extra security or anything. I kept it real low key. So once we have the LDAP turned on, we're going to come down here, we're going to click submit. After we click submit, we're going to go back to the external address book settings on your left. Once we have this turned on, now we're going to go ahead and enable a specific address book. Again, by default, these will all be turned off for testing purposes. I'm going to go ahead and enable the external address book too. Again, normally it's turned off. It'll look like this. Go ahead and turn it on, and then we can go ahead and tell the machine that external address book is safe to use. External address book 2 is safe to use. So what we'll do is we're going to go ahead and select on, and we'll click submit. Once we click submit, then we're going to go ahead and we're going to get into the settings of the external address book. Go ahead and click settings. The external address book settings, again, are specific to the server that you are trying to browse. Again, my stuff is real simple. Some of the settings that we're going to go through, if your server requires extra security, you'll see the areas where you'll have to make those necessary changes. LDAP server name can be IP address or host name. For my server, I'm just going to use the host name. But again, if your DNS was having issues or your NetBIOS was having issues, you go ahead and just type in your IP address. Actually, my server name is actually I2K-DC1. Forgive me. LDAP port 389 is always the standard port. If you guys need to use a different port, you go ahead and change it here. Your search timeout is defaulted for 60 seconds. If you have a large network or if you have a ton of users, you may want to consider extending this timeout, because sometimes that could take a little bit longer. And then basically here we have the login username and password. This login username and password will be specific to the server that you're logging into. So the user that we're going to type in here will need to have login access to that server that you specified in the LDAP server name. I'm on a domain, so I will be putting in my domain name before my username. One thing to note is on some of these machines, I've noticed that it does not LDAP does not play nice with domain admin credentials. So if you are going to go ahead and do this, I strongly suggest creating a new user on the AD server that will be specifically used for this purpose. Like I said, the username, the user that you create does not have to be an admin. I would strongly suggest not setting up as an admin because, like I said, we have had issues in the past where domain admin credentials will not work for whatever reason. After you have the login username and password, you go ahead and change the search results. If you want to, maximum is 30. Otherwise, you can change it if you want the users to be have more results returned. After you're happy with this information, we can go ahead to the bottom and click Submit. I'm going to go over a couple things really quick with you guys that I did not enter. I did not enter a search base. Again, my server is real simple. Not a lot of security on it. Doesn't really matter. A machine can just go in and find all the users. But again, if you have your server fairly locked down, if you have a lot of organizational units, containers, various stuff like that, you may want to consider putting in a search base. The search base can be something as simple as your domain name. So for instance, if I was going to put my domain name as my search base, I would just do I2K Corp, and then actually hold on, it's going to be DC equals I2K Corp, comma DC equals com. So essentially, with my domain name of I2K Corp .com, it's going to be separated, and we're going to add the DC equals to each of those parts. If you wanted to specify further units, you could go ahead and select CN equals users, and then OU equals, whatever further organizational unit you have it drilled down into. But again, a lot of times just leaving it blank is sufficient. Once we have that, once we're satisfied with that, we can drop down the authentication type. Most of the time, the authentication type set to simple is fine, but if your server requires additional types of authentication, Kerberos, stuff like that, you can go ahead and open up that and just choose it. But generally speaking, like I said, authentication type of simple should be sufficient. Once we're happy with the information and we've submitted the information, we go ahead and hit test. With a successful connection, that means that my machine is able to reach out to this server. It was able to log in with the server, and it did make the initial LDAP handshake. And that's pretty much it. Down here, we have some additional search criteria. Basically, this is just what's going to be displayed after the user searches for a name on a machine. So when the user walks up to the copier and does an external address book search and they search, John Smith, it'll go ahead and pull the all the attribute fields that you can see here. And again, these LDAP attributes, these would be the attributes that you would find in the properties of the user account directly on the Active Directory server. And that's it.